What are these? These, my friends, are the end of the world as we know it.
He's an expert in generations, managing change, leadership, and trust.
Every organization has people on the fence in change. That's where most people live.
He's the author of Sticking Points, How to Get 4 Generations Working Together in the 12 Places They Come Apart, and the best-selling workshop, Leading Across Generations. Hayden has spoken to over 100,000 people at 1,500 businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups, as well as not-for-profit organizations and governmental agencies. His long-term organizational development and change projects have been written up in case studies. The Washington Post called him a leadership guru. This is Hayden Shaw.
When we do a change, leaders make a colossal mistake, and the mistake is this: they talk too much. Leaders talk too much. They prepare PowerPoint slides. They sit down with folks and do town hall meetings, and they talk and they talk. Managers talk and they talk and they talk. But what we don't realize in change is that half of every group, half of every organization, half of every team is management deaf. They're management deaf. If you're on the negative side of responding to change, the more the manager tells you you need it, the more reasons you think of why you don't. So the more a leader preaches change, preaches why we got to do this and we got to do that, the more resistance that builds. Now, who do you talk to then? Leaders need to talk to salespeople. Leaders talk to salespeople. If you take the classic distribution curve on change, and many of you have seen this before, you have about 5%, roughly 5% of folks who are very positive toward change, but they're emotional. They love change. They can't buy toothpaste at Costco because it'd be the same flavor for an entire year and it'd drive them crazy. They love change. A whole new product comes out, and they're just as excited when a whole new Post-it note comes out. Look at that, a new color, a new shape. Isn't life wonderful? They just love change. They'll sign up for any committee. How many of you have seen people like that? They'll sign up for a committee, and 2 months later, they are gone. They're not very reliable. Well, of course not. They're emotional and they're change-oriented. They're like a fuselage on a space shuttle. They burn a lot of energy, help launch the thing, and then they fall off. They're the ADHD, right, of the corporate world. And we try to go, how do we get people to quit leaving our committee? You don't. You say, thank you for your energy. Now, please, leave us alone. Because if you let them stay on your committee, they will continue to come up with new stuff. Hey, let's not work on this anymore. Let's work on this. And other folks then begin to want to hurt them in serious ways. Let them make their contribution, get it started, and then drop off. Don't make them feel bad about it. Use them for what they do. Now, there are people who are positive toward change, but they're more rational rather than emotional about it. Makes sense, makes sense, makes sense, but they're positively oriented toward change. Those are the folks managers can train. Managers do their presentations for everybody. Managers show their PowerPoints to everyone, and then they begin to hush up. And they talk to the folks that are change-oriented and they can talk rationally with. Now, let me show you where it goes wrong in most change programs. On teams, we try to put in people who are negative toward change and people who are positive toward change on the same team to get good representation. You ever seen it? We need good representation here. No, we don't. We need to use the negative people in short bursts to sniff out the problems. What's that? Well, you know, it's not going to work for this and this and this and this. Bring them in early, let them sniff it, and then you take the stink out. You bring them in early, you let them sniff it, and then you take the stink out of it. Do not have them on the team, because if they're on the team long term, they will come back with PowerPoints each meeting and new reasons why it won't work. Some crabby people are just crabby, but they're helpful crabby. They point out stuff. They have big noses, and they smell the stink in anything. You know, sometimes you're walking around outside and you get a little dog on your shoe, and you think, what is that? Crabby people. The negative folks that are irrational and logical and analytical, they can smell it. You got some dog on your shoe. Really? Do I? Any new idea that comes out in any organization has got a little dog on it, right? How many of you have seen something that came down from the corporate office in your organization and you thought, that smells a lot like dog, huh? That smells a lot like dog. The beautiful thing about people who are negative, but they're analytical, is they say, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. And they provide wonderful help to us. And then the positive toward change people will come up with a whole list of reasons why it will work. And we will go in circles for 6 months. You ever been there? Positive people. It's like old Saturday Night Live. Jane, you ignorant, right? They just come point and counterpoint. They come back and forth at each other. And we get stuck. Much more effective to let the people who are positive toward change talk to the folks in the middle, the folks on the fence. Every organization has people on the fence in change. That's where most people live. And the funny thing is the people on the fence will listen to the people who are change positive as long as you answer their questions. The positive people hear some negative comments. They say, I don't know how to answer that one. That's a good point. And if the leaders aren't answering their questions and feeding them information about the negative things they're hearing, the change process stops. But if leaders are listening to what their positive people are hearing and giving them information and answers, then those positive people can go back to the folks on the fence with new information, and they slowly sell the change process. Leaders don't sell change. Leaders train salespeople to make change. It's one of the most colossal mistakes leaders make. They talk too much. So we actually increase the number of crabby people by treating crabby people all the same. The most dangerous of all crabby people are light eaters. Light eaters. They eat light. They're the black holes of the emotional world. Then there are yippers and yappers. Yippers and yappers. And lastly, there are the sniffers. Okay? There are the sniffers. Now, what's the difference between a yipper and yapper and a light eater? Yippers and yappers are irritating but not dangerous. Light eaters are dangerous. They're deadly. They're organizational cancer. Yippers and yappers are just irritating, and often we treat yippers and yappers like we do light eaters. There's only 1 or 2% of an organization that are light eaters. What's a light eater? A light eater is a person who is so unhappy in their work, in their job, in their life, that they try to make everyone else around them unhappy. You ever work with those folks? All day long. They are missionaries of unhappiness. They try to make unhappy converts because they're miserable and they believe that the fault of their misery isn't in themselves, it is in everything else around them. And if you're happy in the same circumstances, it may prove to them that it's not the company's problem, it's their problem. Exactly. And so they have to convert everyone else. There isn't anything you can do. And often they are very, very smart. They don't take on the boss directly. They take them on the side. You know, it's a horrible place to live here. This is a horrible job. And as soon as a new employee comes in, when a light eater gets fresh meat, it is all over. You ever notice that the most negative people in your organization land at lunch tables with the newest folks? I don't care what they told you in HR when they recruited you. This place is nasty. They're mean here. Let me tell you stories. And you know, they have 15 years of stories. You ever run into somebody? You're brand new in a job and they tell you about something that happened and you think it happened 2 days before. It didn't. It happened 15 years ago. It's like, hello, cough up that emotional hairball. You need emotional Heimlich maneuver. Let us help you here. Light eaters are dangerous. They're cancer. Organizations have to deal with them quickly. And you know you dealt with a light eater when everyone else says, I can't believe they did that to old Joe. He's been here for 25 years. Never worked a full day in the whole 25, but he's been here 25 years. One company I worked with, the guy fell asleep at his lathe. He was a machinist. He fell asleep at the lathe, and they said, you know, he's just into meditation. That was the excuse that they gave. It was wrong for the company to deal with that because he was just meditating. He's a really deep person, you know. It's crazy talk, but you know what happens? About 3 weeks after that person's gone, people start smiling more, and they began to say, you know, they always were crabby. Haven't you seen it happen? Well, the second group are yippers and yappers. What's a yipper and yapper? A yipper and yapper is like a little yippy dog. My family got a toy poodle. Our kids are allergic to dogs, so we got a toy poodle, and we have wooden floors, and they can't scratch it. Beautiful thing is you can throw that dog all the way across. No animal cruelty. I've never laid a hand on that dog, although I have fantasized about it more than once. Okay? And that little poodle thinks she is big because she will head outside and take on a Great Dane that walks by. She'll take on a Great Dane. She'll run outside and yip and yip and yip and bounce. And as soon as that Great Dane looks at her, she runs back inside and hides under the table. Yippy dogs. Those are people who are emotional, and they're extroverts. They're verbal, and they worry out loud. Oh, and another thing, boss, and another thing. I believe we are low on paper clips. I just want you to know the paperclip inventory is disastrously low. Okay, thanks for sharing. And by the way, did you know I really worry about our sales for next quarter? Okay? And, you know, really, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about our future here. The sky is always falling for those folks. They are irritating, but they are not deadly. What we do with crabby people is we burp them. Just like you would a child. When change happens, when there's too much change, people develop gas. Emotional gas. Yeah. A baby gets gas when it eats. We all get gas when we eat, but people who can walk, they walk that off. Yippers and yappers need to be burped. They work hard. They're good. A colleague of mine, we were sitting in a meeting. I've been there for 10 years at Franklin Covey, and these two guys got up and pounded the table and said the same thing they had for 5 years about a policy that would never change because nobody in the entire industry did it that way. And they were on a pipe dream, and they would beat the table and turn red to face every year over the same thing. And I finally turned to my colleague Judy, and I said, Judy, kill them. I can't take it anymore. A little ADHD. I can't take it anymore. They must die. They're cancer. She said, don't you know the difference between cancer and somebody who just worries out loud, somebody who just yips and yaps? I said, apparently not. They yip and yap, and they get it out of their system, and they head right back out to work and work the whole rest of the year really hard. They don't complain about our company to customers. They just get it out of their system. They worry out loud. Every year, we do the same thing. Our boss burps the people who need to burp. We only meet together once a year. We travel the rest of the time. She burps them, and then they're fine. Makes sense? You got somebody who's crabby? If you're a supervisor or a team member, you just put their head down right on your shoulder. You get an adult-sized diaper because it can get messy. You put your head down on your shoulder, and you just pound away. And another thing, and my boss, and my kids, and the price of gasoline, and nobody listens to me. Aww. I feel so much better now. Can I come back tomorrow? No. No. Many times when I work with organizations and we're dealing with conflict, what I have to do is to get people talking and begin to get the real stuff out on the table, and then let the light eater show their stuff. And the rest of the team says, yep, it's not hidden anymore. Light eaters tend to work in the shadows, and we need to bring what they do out into the forefront, out into the light. As Stephen Covey says, light is the best disinfectant. Light's the best disinfectant in organizations. We bring it out into the light.
If you want to see change in the lives of your audience built on practical content and great stories, if you want humor that helps people to see things differently, and if you want someone who does his homework to create maximum takeaway value, Hayden Shaw will deliver for you as he has for hundreds of organizations.